When movie stars pass on, it's hard for fans to say goodbye, but we'll always have the final film roles to remember them by, even if they weren't intended to be final when the actors shot them. Aside from Vin Diesel, no actor is more closely associated with the Fast and Furious franchise than Paul Walker. His death in a 2013 car crash in Santa Clarita, California, at just 40, was a devastating blow to fans. In his final months, Walker raised funds for typhoon relief and had just left a charity event when the accident occurred. At the time, he was also in the middle of shooting Furious 7, his last on-screen role. In many ways, Furious 7 feels like the natural endpoint of the series. Though the franchise carried on, the seventh film serves as a culmination of all that came before, with Walker's character Brian O'Connor retiring from a life of crime. More than just a solid action heist flick, it's a tribute to Walker's career and memory, completed with the help of his brothers as stand-ins. Its theme song, See You Again by Wiz Khalifa and Charlie Puth, has since become inseparable from Walker's legacy. Once voted the greatest actor of the 21st century by The Independent, Philip Seymour Hoffman was a powerful performer with a career that spanned big franchise blockbusters, independent features, and Oscar winners. Known for his distinctive character work, Hoffman's final on-screen role was in both parts of The Hunger Games' Mockingjay, where he played the secret rebel Plutarch Heavensbee. Off-screen, he privately battled substance abuse, a struggle that ultimately led to his death in February 2014. He nearly finished filming before his untimely death, which altered what would have been his last scene with Jennifer Lawrence's Katniss Everdeen. While Hoffman may be remembered best for other roles, Mockingjay served as a two-part send-off with a performance widely praised by critics.
People don't always show up the way you want them to, Madam President.
Few actor deaths in the 21st century hit audiences as hard as Heath Ledger's, having become a household name with films like 10 Things I Hate About You and Brokeback Mountain. Ledger died in January 2008, 7 months before the release of the most notable performance of his entire career, his turn as the Joker in The Dark Knight. While The Clown Prince of Crime would define his filmography, it was not his final film. That honor belongs to Terry Gilliam's The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus, which hit theaters in late 2009. Ledger's role as Tony Shepard was completed with the help of Johnny Depp, Jude Law, and Colin Farrell, yet his spirit lingered over the entire production. The performance may not be as unforgettable as his Joker, but Ledger is as enigmatic and complex here. The fate of his character eerily mirrors his own, giving the film a tone that's both melancholy and magical.
Voila!
There's a reason that it took 3 actors to finish Ledger's role. As Gilliam told Entertainment Weekly, Depp, Law, and Farrell were chosen because no single actor could match him. The director added, "We'll never know what the movie would have been like with Heath playing all of it, but what we have is magical." Best known for his portrayal of Black Panther in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Chadwick Boseman spent the final decade of his career diversifying his filmography and proving his exceptional skills as an actor. But few knew that during the time, Boseman had been diagnosed with colon cancer, which ultimately claimed his life in August 2020. Although his final performance of any kind was voice work in the Marvel series What If, his last live-action film role was in the Netflix production Ma Rainey's Black Bottom.
I ain't had nothing but bad luck all my life, couldn't get no worse. What the hell I care about some bad luck?
Playing the charismatic trumpeter Levy Green, Boseman commands the screen in a career-defining performance that rivals even some of his best roles. In one sequence in particular, Green puts on quite a show, dancing, playing, and proving his musical instincts far superior to those of his peers. As the Los Angeles Times wrote, Boseman, evincing the same integrity he clung to his entire career, refuses to soft-pedal the destination. While the Netflix film may not be what audiences most remember Boseman for, his work in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom reveals the devotion of a man who loved to perform and did so to the very best of his ability. If you know anything about The Crow, then you're probably aware that the 1994 comic book adaptation was also the last film to feature Brandon Lee, the son of Bruce Lee. Brandon was nearing the end of his work on the movie when a mishap occurred with a prop gun on set. The weapon hadn't been properly checked, and Lee was shot with a real bullet, ultimately bleeding to death. Although The Crow was finished after Lee's passing, with future John Wick director Chad Stahelski stepping in as a body double, the accident hung over the film, giving the movie a haunting quality. In the film, after Lee's character, Eric Draven, is shot and killed, he is resurrected a year later as The Crow to exact revenge on those responsible. In a similar vein, the posthumous release of Lee's performance feels like a brief resurrection, only for the actor's soul to be laid to rest by the end credits. The parallels between Lee and his character are striking. Both left fiancés behind, and both suffered gunshot wounds that led to their untimely deaths. Lee's performance in the film is outstanding, and it remains the only successful adaptation of The Crow to this day. Robin Williams and Rooney are Hollywood legends, each with very different careers. Williams was a comedic genius who could glide effortlessly between serious and humorous roles, while Rooney was one of the last stars from Hollywood's silent era, spending nearly a century on the big screen. Though their styles and reach were quite different, Williams and Rooney crossed paths a few times, with their final on-screen performances both appearing in 2014's Night at the Museum, Secret of the Tomb. The final installment of the Night at the Museum trilogy, Secret of the Tomb, wraps up the mythology of the films, but it does more than that. The movie also serves as a farewell to Williams, who uses his last moments on screen to inspire hope for the future and deliver one final laugh.
Smile, my boy. It's sunrise.
Likewise, though his role is smaller, Rooney's final appearance as Gus is on brand and a hilarious send-off.
Listen to him, monkey face.
It's no surprise that the film was dedicated to their memory, and that it can be a difficult watch for some fans. Best known for his role as Superman in 4 movies between 1978 and 1987, Christopher Reeve will forever be defined by the character. But in 1995, he suffered a devastating accident that changed the course of his life and career. Thrown from a horse and paralyzed from the neck down, it seemed unlikely that Reeve would ever work again. Yet, he proved everyone wrong. 3 years later, he starred in a television remake of the Alfred Hitchcock classic Rear Window. Reeve had a clear vision for what he hoped to achieve with the project, explaining, "I'd like to see more roles for disabled people where they're cast in the lead, instead of being the villain or pathetic or whatever, just normal people." Though he remained closely tied to Superman, his final on-screen role was in an episode of the prequel series Smallville. Reeve's performance in the 1998 version of Rear Window deserves recognition. Despite immense physical challenges, he was still at the top of his game.
Do you think I'm crazy?
Not crazy, just imaginative.
For decades, John Wayne was Hollywood's resident cowboy star. The Duke, as he was often called, crafted a distinct kind of Western hero who never shied away from a fight. Many of Wayne's films in the 1970s can be seen as a swan song, but it's The Shootist, his final picture, that truly stands out. The 1976 film features the Duke as J.B. Bucks, a notorious lawman and gunfighter who is on his last legs as he succumbs to cancer. What makes it unforgettable is that Wayne himself was battling the disease while making the film.
I'm tired of people pawing over my death for this reason or that or for any reason.
As Quentin Tarantino put in his review for New Beverly Cinema, there's nothing in The Shootist you haven't seen done many times before and done better, but what you haven't seen before is a dying John Wayne give his last performance. The sudden death of James Dean is remembered as one of Hollywood's greatest tragedies. The young star was only 24 when he was killed in a car crash, cutting his film career tragically short. After several years on television, Dean broke through in 1955 with his role in East of Eden. His second starring feature, Rebel Without a Cause, was released after his death, but his final on-screen appearance came a year later in the 1956 epic Giant. Dean wasn't the first choice to play Jet Rink, but his unforgettable performance earned him a second Academy Award nomination for Best Actor. The melodrama of the West Texas oil business played to all his strengths. Though he died before production wrapped, Dean had completed all his scenes. His absence didn't lessen the impact of Giant. If anything, his death pushed the film further into the spotlight as a glimpse of the career that Dean may have had. Few actresses who made a name for themselves during the old Hollywood era were as delightful on the screen as Audrey Hepburn, best known for classics like Breakfast at Tiffany's and My Fair Lady. Hepburn was one of the most recognizable actresses of her day, but after the late 1960s, Hepburn didn't appear on the big screen nearly as often as audiences have become used to. With only a handful of film performances in the 70s and 80s, the icon's final role was in the 1989 Steven Spielberg rom-com Always.
Hello, Pete.
Playing an angel named Hap, who gives Richard Dreyfuss's Pete Sandage advice on how to navigate his place in the afterlife, many consider Hepburn's role in Always to be nothing more than a glorified cameo. But after filming her final big-screen role, Hepburn moved on to more important things. In the last few years of her life, she worked closely with the UNICEF, going on several field missions as a Goodwill ambassador until her death in January 1993. Although Hepburn's final role in Always may seem small in comparison to her later philanthropic contributions, that she played an angel seeking to guide a weary soul just feels right, considering the way she spent her final years. Hap was a beautiful last part for Hepburn to play, one that reflected the type of woman she aimed to be.